everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to be doing a challenge I have seen popping up recently on BookTube, which is to use a random number generator to see how many hours a day I'm going to be reading. I have no idea how this is going to go. Probably poorly because on a previous attempt of a 24-hour timer challenge I never made it to 24 hours. Anyway, let's keep a positive mindset and quickly talk about some of the books I think I'm going to be reading in this video. The first one I have is Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. Technically, I'm done with this book, but I still have to read As Yet Unsent, which is the short story that is included in the paperback version of this book. And I think that should take me like no time at all. Next book I'm planning on reading is Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I currently have started this book. I'm only around like 15% in, so I'm hoping with the added bonus of the timer challenge I'll make a lot of progress in this book and hopefully even finish it in this video. Another book I want to read is A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. I really enjoyed Divide Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and I think because of the popularity of that book, a lot of people have been going back and reading the original duology she published last year, which was A River Enchanted as well as its sequel. So I'm hoping to read through as much as I can of this book in this video. And the last book I'm going to read, I'm not going to talk too much about because I'm doing a whole separate reading vlog for it, and that is House of Leaves by Mark D. Danielewski. Yeah, this book is going to take a while for me to read through, and honestly, I don't know how much I'm going to talk about in this video. Anyway, with that intro out of the way, let's get into the reading vlog. Okay, yeah, we can definitely do that. So I wanted to give you a reading update for today as well as yesterday. So I currently have read for about 52 minutes for today. Yesterday was a little bit of a fail. I only read for like an hour and a half-ish, but basically I am trying to make up the additional time that I missed from yesterday onto today, because as you saw before this, my timer for today was only for 1 hour. So I'm about to hit that 1 hour mark, and then hopefully I can build up the hours that I missed out from yesterday. But I wanted to give you like a massive wrap up of everything I've read in the last 3 days. So the first day I was supposed to read for 3 hours. I spent most of that listening to the audiobook for The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I had previously started this a little bit, but I think I am now around a third of the way through. And so far, it's fine. I think the writing style is okay. I just am a little bit bored, to be honest. This is a new adult fantasy romance that was indie published initially, but has since been picked up, I think, by Tor's romance book imprint. So it's going to be traditionally published, and they kept the same cover, which is kind of nice. This follows our main character, Aurea, who is a human adoptive daughter of the Vampire King, and she has to compete in this tournament where the winners of the tournament are given a gift from the goddess. And she's trying to win the chance to become a vampire herself, because this is one of those vampire worlds where the turning process, like 2 out of 3 times, results in death. And her vampire dad is not willing to take that risk for her. So he has instead trained her to participate in this tournament so that she can win it and become a vampire. She catches the interest of these 2 vampires, Rain and Misha, and they decide to ally with her up until the halfway point through the tournament, because there's a trial that specifically requires everyone to work in teams. And after that, in theory, they are going to break off and then become enemies. Aurea has a little bit of a like rivals to lovers, enemies to lovers situation with Rain. I actually really like him. I think he is pretty like light and funny. He obviously has a little bit of a tragic backstory, because we do know that he is a vampire that was turned as opposed to born into his vampirism. But overall, he's been pretty funny and snarky with Aurea, and she's much more of like the grumpy, really angry, distrustful one, which is definitely a dynamic I prefer versus the guy being the grumpy one. I also really like the relationship of Vincent and Aurea. I love Vincent. I love an overprotective dad character. He's kind of like if Maddox in the Folk of the Air series wasn't also an asshole. So there are some aspects of the stories in particular with the characters that I'm enjoying it, but I think overall I feel like the pacing is just a little bit off. I feel like one problem with tournament books, it's really easy for like the tension to get lessened with each coming trial. I feel like The Hunger Games does it best because there's a lot of lead up and then just like back-to-back trials and issues that the main characters are going through, all in like a very short set period of time. versus like, here's a trial, now here's a couple like weeks of them training for the next one, here's another trial. I feel like that just kind of like cuts into all of the tension. Whereas I much rather would have had like a lot of backstory and getting to know the characters in the beginning instead of immediately jumping into a trial and then having the like breaks in the middle. So yeah, it's okay. Right now, it's probably sitting at like a 3 stars, maybe 3.5, depending on how the rest of the book goes. Another thing I read in the last couple days is I finished the last section of Harrow the Ninth. I think I had like the last chapter or two to finish, as well as the short story, which is As Yet Unsent, which is included in the paperback version. That story is primarily focusing on Judith, who is a side character you met in the first book. And it definitely gave me a lot more context to why a lot of people ship Judith and Corona as a couple. There were definitely a couple moments in that story that I really enjoyed. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I think I'm going to give it a 4.5 stars. There's just a couple things in it that I liked slightly less than the previous book in the series. I'm really excited to read Nona, but I'm trying to wait until we have a release date for Electo before I start reading the next book in the series. Because I don't want to marathon read through all of it and then get to the end of Nona and then have like no idea when I'm going to be able to read the next book. So I feel like I should wait until there's a release date, and then maybe like 1 or 2 months before that, I'll read Nona, so I'll be ready to jump into Electo as soon as it comes out. And the last book I've been reading, which you've seen in some of my updates, has been A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. This is an adult, I think Celtic-inspired fantasy that follows our main character Jack, who used to live on this isle called Cadence, but he left to go to the mainland to study music, but he's been called home 10 years later to help solve the case of these missing girls that they think are connected to these spirits that only Jack will be able to call as a musician. The very beginning of this book, maybe like the first 50 pages, I was a little lost and not a huge fan of the pacing, but I think it has gotten a little bit better and I've been more engaged with the story up until where I am right now. I'm currently at chapter 8, which is 137 pages in, which probably should signal to you that these are quite long chapters. I'm not necessarily a long chapter hater, but it is a little bit like sad to think that you're making a lot of progress in the story and then you're only within like the single digit chapter numbers. One thing I do dislike about the book, at least in the physical reading experience, is that when the perspectives change, there isn't like any signifier in the actual like text. You know how sometimes authors will have like those ... dots to separate different scenes? I really wish that those were included in this book to show the different like perspective shifts. Because sometimes I'm thinking that I'm reading from the same character because I didn't notice the name switch when I start a new paragraph. And I feel like that visual signifier of the different breaks would be really helpful in helping the reader kind of follow the story a little bit easier. I know it's an incredibly niche critique I have for this book, but it's something I've been cognizant of as I'm reading to try and be more like aware of whose perspective I'm following. And I feel like any of those moments of confusion will help like kind of break the immersion in a book. So being able to easily switch from one perspective to another is really helpful. Anyway, that is my progress so far. I have about like an hour until I'm supposed to go to Will's house. So I think I'm going to try and read more of A River Enchanted now. And I hopefully will have another update for you guys soon. Okay, at this point now, I think I'm going to say that I've ended my week of reading. I want to go through my progress for each of the days and talk about how much I actually read. So for day 1, I got a 3-hour request and I read for the full 3 hours. Day 2, I got a 4-hour request and I only read for 1 hour and 25 minutes. And I decided I needed to make up that lost time on following days. On day 3, I got a 1-hour request and I read for 1 hour and 35 minutes. Then on day 4, I got another 1-hour request and I read for 2 hours. Day 5, I had a request for 4 hours and I read for 2 hours and 49 minutes. On day 6, I got a 3-hour request and I read for 1 hour and 10 minutes. And then at that point, I had quite a large deficit of 4 hours and 1 minute. So I decided to spend the last day playing catch up with all the other days' deficits added together. Oh my god, why is adding time so difficult? But my final time for day 7 was 2 hours and 53 minutes. So not only did I not complete reading the amount of time I was supposed to for some of the days, I also did not complete reading up the deficit I had accrued from those previous days. Anyway, I'm going to go really quickly and talk about all of the books that I read. First one was Harrow the Ninth. Still slaps. Loved it a ton. Really enjoyed the short story at the end as well. House of Leaves. Also still slaps. Again, I'm going to do a full reading vlog of this book as well as having spoilers, so I'm not going to say too much about it here. Now for Serpent and the Wings of Night, it's okay. I think I like the last fourth of the book way more than all the other parts. Overall, I think it's slightly too long, and the romance is the most engaging aspect of the book, so the fact that it took a while to get started was definitely a big flaw. I think if the first part would have been more engaging, I wouldn't have minded the lack of romance, but I just felt the format of it going from like a trial to a waiting period to another trial to another waiting period made like all the tension dissipate and kind of messed up the flow of the book. However, upon finishing the book, I am now more interested in reading the sequel than I thought I would be. I thought at first I wouldn't bother, but I'm definitely more engaged now with how the book ended. And I think the second book will have less of the problems that the first one did with the change in motivations for the characters. So yeah, I think in the end it's somewhere between a 3 and a 3.5. Now let's talk about A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. I still have not yet finished this book. I have like around 40 pages left, and honestly, I am still very bored. I feel like this book overall has a very slow build-up. It kind of feels like old-timey, almost like an old wives' tale type energy to it, with some of the choices and how the characters speak and act, which I think works in a more whimsical setting, but here, coupled with the length of the book, just makes it feel very stagnant and confusing. In classic fashion, I also feel like I sort of fucked it up for myself because I was like, oh, I bet this is going to be a twist for one of the characters' backstories, and then it ended up being something else way more normal, and I was like, oh, never mind. I kind of don't think I'm going to be reading the second half. This is a huge letdown if you like Divine Rivals and you're like, I need more Rebecca Ross in my life. I think honestly, maybe just wait for Ruthless Vows to come out instead of reading this one. Now let's talk about what overall I feel like I've learned from this reading experiment. A big thing is the fact that I have no respect for the authority of a challenge. I just feel like I am not the type of person that will change my life patterns for a goofy internet challenge. If I get 4 hours that I'm supposed to read as my God-given time, but then I'm busy all day, I will not be canceling my plans to do the challenge. I feel like overall you just have to follow your joy. And for me, this week, I was like, maybe I'll do this challenge, but maybe I'll also listen to 5 hours of the Baldur's Gate cast playing D&D because that's my new comfort video. IDK, who can really say what happened? I also feel like I failed this challenge a little bit because I wasn't super passionate in the books that I was reading. Like, I had 2 mid books. One book that I loved, but I was basically done reading it when the challenge started. Another book that I really love, but it's very, like, big brain, so I don't really want to end my days reading this book. So maybe if I was really obsessed with these books, I would have prioritized reading more and gotten a lot more done. But at the same time, besides going to work, because I still have a 9-to-5 job, I was spending my free time playing Pokemon Go with my wife, watching Hannibal with my best friend. So I know this is kind of like a strange ending, but I just kind of feel like you shouldn't force yourself to read. Challenges are supposed to be fun and to push you outside your comfort zone, but I never want my hobby or my free time to become a chore that I'm slugging through. Anyway, a bit of a strange ending for this video, but hopefully overall you enjoyed this reading vlog. If you did, consider liking this video or subscribing if you aren't already. Already, I'm so happy with the subscriber growth I've gotten since starting this channel. I really can't thank you all enough for coming and being here with me. As always, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!